Hey, everybody, welcome to Hearing God in John chapter 5, where Jesus asks a very important question that is relevant to us all. And to set the scene, it is in Jerusalem, and Jesus has gone to a place called the Sheep Gate, where there was a pool. And at this pool, lots of disabled people would gather. There seemed to be some kind of a superstition that at various times an angel would come and stir the waters, and the first person into the pool would receive some kind of healing. And so, how that all came about and the validity of that, I can't speak to that. The Bible doesn't say. There just does seem to be a great deal of superstition surrounding that, but people believed it. And so there was a large gathering of those who were disabled who were gathered around this pool. And so Jesus went to this place and he encountered a man there who had been an invalid for 38 years. And my highlight in the chapter comes from verse 6. When Jesus saw him lying there and knew that he had already been there a long time, he said to him, "Do you want to be healed?" Some other translations say, "Do you want to be well?" And it begs the question, it's like, well, why would Jesus ask this question? Of course, this guy wants to be healed. He wants to be well. But experience in ministry tells me that's not necessarily true. That there are lots of people, when given the choice of either being well, having Jesus do a deep work in their lives by which they are healed, whether that be spiritually, emotionally, relationally, physically, whatever form that healing would take. With that also comes responsibility and accountability on the other side, where we have to take ownership of our lives on the other side of that. As long as I'm not well, there's a certain mindset of victimization, a certain mindset which says, you know what, I can't do anything about it. And we're filled with excuses on that side of things. And so that becomes, for many people, their identity. And it's very sad and it's very tragic because God wants to do so much more in us and through us. But if we take upon ourselves that victimization mentality, with lots of excuses, choosing to stay in the comfortability of that place of dysfunction rather than, again, looking ahead in faith to the deep work that God can and would do in us, um, it really is an interesting question that Jesus asks. And sadly, many people choose not to be well. And so it's interesting how the man responds. I don't know whether it was exactly the right answer. He actually responds with a bit of an excuse. Verse 7, the sick man answered him, "Sir, I have no one to put me into the pool when the water is stirred up, and while I am going, another steps down before me." And so we could read that probably a couple different ways. Either the man is kind of identifying with his victimization, or maybe this is a plea for Jesus to help. Whatever it was, Jesus responded with the command, "Get up, take up your bed, and walk." And so Jesus puts the ball in the man's court, if you will, and says, "Hey, it's time for you to take some action. I've got all the power you need. I can do everything that's necessary here, but you're going to have to do your part. You're going to have to believe me. You're going to have faith. You're going to have to get up, take up your bed, and walk." And sure enough, in verse 9, and at once the man was healed, and he took up his bed and he walked. And so I believe, Jesus, through his omnipotence, his omniscience, was able to look deep into this man's soul and knew that he had faith to be healed and know that he wanted to be healed. And so Jesus responded accordingly. Interestingly, this pool was surrounded by people who needed healing. Jesus chose one. And so there's some interesting dynamics there, even as we talk about a theology of healing and why Jesus heals some but not all. This is actually a really interesting case study of that. And so, in application, that question of Jesus is one, again, that I return to in ministry time and time again as I work with people. Do you really want to be well? I think sometimes we're just tired of our circumstances, but not really willing to move and to do what's necessary for Jesus to make us well. Many people would rather remain in their familiar dysfunction than step out in faith and obedience into the unknown of the work of God doing in them. And when the truth of the matter is, when we give up our mats or our, as it says here, our beds, we also give up our victimization and our excuses. And again, then we're met with responsibility and accountability, but also a flourishing and abundant life that Jesus intends for us. And so ask you that question today, and in whatever realm that might hit you, do you want to be well? Do you want to be healed? Do you really want Jesus to do the work of freedom and deliverance in you, whatever form that is needed in your life? Do you really want to be healed? And it's my prayer that you do, and it's also my prayer that as you express that desire, express that faith in Jesus, that he will reveal those next steps for you to take. For this gentleman, it was get up, pick up your bed, and walk. There's going to be some form of that, I'm sure, for each one of us. And I confess that there are times when I don't like my circumstances, but I don't know that I dislike them enough to be well, to be healed. And I'd rather live in my cozy apathy of ignorance and irresponsibility and victimization rather than to step out and do the things that God has called me to do. And so my response, my prayer is, Father, please enlarge my vision for the great work that you want to do in me and through me, and give me the strength and courage to want to be well and to do my part in picking up my mat and walking. And so I hope that's a challenge and an encouragement for you today on a snowy Tuesday, April 15th here in northern Michigan. One day closer to spring. So hang in there. We'll talk again soon.